Hey, I've been thinking about taking Mom on a trip for her birthday. Would that be okay? When I got home from work, my husband David approached me with this idea. David has a good relationship with his parents. They are down-to-earth people and always treat me well. However, since my promotion, work has become busier, and I hardly have any time to visit my in-laws. I don't mind, but do you think it'd be okay if I didn't go? I've been incredibly busy with work lately, and it's hard for me to get a long weekend off. I wouldn't be able to go on the trip with them, but David seemed okay with that. Sure, that's fine. My parents understand you're busy, and they seem to feel a bit obliged when you're around. I think they might even feel more at ease if it's just me. Next time we visit them, you should come with me, though. Even though I get along well with my in-laws, staying overnight with them is a different story. I genuinely want them to have a good time, so I decided to prepare a gift for my mother-in-law and ask David to give it to her. However, this turned out to be a mistake. My name is Angela, and I'm a 32-year-old employee at a corporation. I met David 3 years ago, and we got married. We've been thinking about having a child, but my job has been very demanding, so we're not moving forward on that part. Still, I've always valued having separate time even after marriage, and I'm quite content with our non-interfering lifestyle. On the day David was to leave for the trip with his parents, I left for work early. After a while, I received a message from David. He was on his way to his parents' house, planning to head to a hotel the next morning. David has been working overtime and on weekends too, so I was happy to hear he was getting a break. I texted him back to have fun, but the weather started to look suspicious. In the afternoon, the forecast changed to heavy rain by night, and I was instructed to wrap up work and head home. So I left the office in the evening. When I stepped outside, it was already starting to rain, and the sky was dark. I only had a folding umbrella, which felt inadequate, but I managed to get home before it started pouring. David's parents live in a neighboring state. I started to worry and called David, who assured me, I'm at my parents' house now, and it's not too bad here. I think we'll be okay. Sure, it wasn't raining that much yet, and sometimes weather forecasts can be exaggerated. It might not even rain that much in reality. I was worried about his elderly parents, but David was there, and I felt a bit relieved, thinking they would call if anything happened. However, as the night progressed, the rain got heavier. Looking outside, it was clear the weather was pretty rough, and it would be better not to venture out. I turned on the TV feeling anxious, and it seemed like it was raining quite heavily in the area where David's parents lived. As I was watching the weather news, the scene switched to a relay screen. The scene was the city where David's parents lived. In a panic, I tried calling David, but I couldn't get through to him, no matter how many times I tried. I sent him a message, but there was no reply. Worried, I called my mother-in-law, and the shocking truth was revealed. After a few rings, she answered the call. Mom, I saw it on the news. Are you okay? Thank you, Angela. It's quite serious here, and we got stranded while deciding whether to go to the shelter. Apparently the rain had flooded up to their doorstep, and they couldn't walk to the shelter. They don't have a car at their place, so they've taken refuge on the second floor of the house. But isn't David driving over? When I said that, my mother-in-law responded with confusion. David? He said he was coming here. We didn't get any notification. Our conversation wasn't lining up. As we slowly pieced things together, it seems my mother-in-law thought David was headed to their house out of concern due to rain. No, he was supposed to go on a trip with you guys starting from tomorrow, right? He said he'd leave in the morning, so he was heading over today. He told me he had arrived a while ago. A trip? What are you talking about? At this point, I began to understand, but for now, I was more worried about my in-laws. I told my mother-in-law to gather necessary items and hopped into my car. I've always enjoyed camping and often drove on mountain roads, so before getting married, I got a car suitable for rough terrains. I thought about selling my car after getting married, but since David uses his car for work, I didn't see the need to sell it and kept using it. I hadn't been camping lately, so the car hadn't been used much, but I never thought it would be useful at a time like this. After about an hour, I reached my in-laws' house. The rain seemed to have lightened up a bit. However, it was uncertain when it would get worse again. And in the nearby river was reportedly rising. We had to get away from there as soon as possible. I told my in-laws to get into the car quickly and brought them to my house. Once we arrived, I served some tea. They seemed to relax, and I felt at ease too. Then my father-in-law spoke up. Angela, we can't thank you enough for all that you've done, but we can't reach David either. We'd like to know what's going on. I couldn't lie at this point. I told him that David had left the house, saying that he was going on a trip with them. However, they said they hadn't heard anything about it. I had a bad feeling about this. I went into David's room. There were several travel magazines lying around. I had seen him reading them recently. He said he was figuring out where to take his parents, so I took his word for it and didn't ask anything further. However, upon closer inspection, the magazines clearly featured tourist spots for couples. There were several options marked with the corners of the pages folded. Upon checking them, one place had a circle drawn with a marker. Moreover, there was a mark on the booking site for that particular accommodation. How conspicuous. I booted up the computer in the living room. The history showed access to the booking site and a confirmation email that had been sent to an email address he doesn't usually use. If it were a trip with his parents, the reservation should have been for 3 people, but it was stated as for 2. I usually use my work computer, so I barely touched this one. That's why my husband was off guard. He was too unsuspecting. Come to think of it, my husband loves writing and he kept a diary. I went back to his room and searched for the diary. I found it surprisingly quickly and hesitantly opened it to today's date. There, I found the word trip and a heart symbol written. I was a bit taken aback. As I flipped back through the diary, it was filled with clear evidence of infidelity. Whether he didn't think he was doing anything wrong or was intoxicated with the immorality of it all, there were several entries about fun dates. My memory of the past is vague. But remembering recent events, it seemed that he had been going on these dates on days when he said he was working overtime or going into work on his days off. If it was just suspicious, I thought I could somehow gloss it over and not tell my in-laws and discuss it when my husband came home. But it was too blatant to hide from my in-laws. Besides, I felt like I was being made a fool of by his openly cheating, and there was no way I, with my high pride, could ever forgive this. While I was talking with my in-laws, my cell phone rang. It was from my husband. I asked my in-laws to stay quiet, and I answered the phone in a flustered manner. Hello? Where are you right now? A calm voice came from the other end. I'm at my parents' house. I'm going on a trip with them from tomorrow. Remember, I emailed you about it in the afternoon. Why are you so flustered? Yeah, it is raining heavily, but it's not a problem. Is that all? My husband lied blatantly. He was going on a trip in the opposite direction, so he had no way of knowing the local situation. In front of me, my father-in-law was showing his anger, but my mother-in-law was restraining him. Got it. You're coming back from the trip the day after tomorrow, right? Yeah, but I got the rest of next week off. I'll stay over after I drop off my parents. I guess I'll be home in about 3 days. Was he planning to enjoy such a long cheating trip? Suppressing my anger, I somehow managed to hang up the phone. Then I told my in-laws, I'm sorry. I don't think I can continue with David anymore. He was cheating so blatantly. David must be planning to end things with me as well. Well, if that's the case, before he brings up divorce, I'll divorce him. It's my only pride. Fortunately, we don't have any children, and my job is going well. It shouldn't be much of a problem if I got divorced and became single. Rather, if I don't have to do housework for my husband, it might be easier than it is now. My mother-in-law was crying, and my father-in-law was furious. My in-laws apologized to me repeatedly, but they are going through a tough time too. This is not the time to make an apology to me. Besides, it's my husband who's at fault. I don't think it's my in-law's responsibility. Surely he would get at least some information about what's going on at his parents' place from TV or the internet, yet he didn't even contact his parents to check if they were okay. Maybe he's too infatuated with his affair partner. But no matter what, it's too much. I thought he was someone who could cherish his parents, but I was disappointed by this incident. I said to my in-laws who kept apologizing, "Could you give me a hand?" Then the next day, I took a day off from work to put a plan into action. After a night, the rain had stopped at my in-laws' place. And it was reported on TV that the damage wasn't severe. My in-laws seemed relieved. After confirming that, I started to tidy up the house with the help of my in-laws. I called a friend who was a real estate agent and started looking for a place I could rent immediately. My friend said that since it was the off-season, There were places available for immediate occupancy, and he would send me some options. In between tidying, I contacted a moving company, and because it was also their off-season, they said they could move me the next day. Things moved quickly, and luckily, I found a place near work, so I decided to settle there. With the help of my in-laws, we almost finished tidying up by evening, and I saw them off the next day. I was going to move out of the apartment where I had been living with my husband. I had no hesitation about moving quickly. Originally, this apartment was mine and it's still in my name. I thought we could keep living here until we had children or buy a house. I've had a relatively long relationship with the landlord and we chat whenever we meet. I called the landlord and explained the situation. I told him I was moving out and would cancel the lease at the end of the month. He was surprised to hear I was moving out immediately, but he understood the situation and agreed to change the front door's number lock code before my husband got home. When I moved here, I was puzzled by the unfamiliar number lock, but I was just realizing the advantage of being able to change it quickly. The next day, the movers took my belongings to the new apartment, and I asked the courier service to send my husband's belongings somewhere else. The new apartment was a great fit for me, and because it was the off-season, there was no first month's rent, and the moving costs were also discounted. Once the move was over, I hurried to a law office. My in-laws called me worried, but I told them the move had gone smoothly and said I'd contact them once things had settled down. Days passed, and it was the day when my husband was coming home. As expected, he called me in the evening. "Angela, where are you? I can't open the door of the house and the mailbox is blocked. What's going on?" I could hardly suppress my laughter at my frantic husband's voice. "I've moved out," I said. "What? I'm divorcing you," he exclaimed. "Huh," I coldly replied. "Of course, right. Can I continue to live with someone who lies about going on a trip with his parents and actually goes on a cheating trip?" At this, my husband fell silent. "And isn't it too harsh not to contact at all when your own parents' house is being hit by heavy rain? You can't possibly not know, right? Have you not been watching TV or the internet at all? But don't worry, your parents came to my place and their house is safe, but you may never be able to return to that house," I continued. As I saw my in-laws off, my father-in-law firmly stated, "We have no intention of letting David back into this house. He must pay for his actions." "What? Wait, what's happening? What should I do, and where are my belongings?" My husband began to panic even more, but by this point, I felt no sympathy for him. "You know, if you're going to cheat, at least be smart enough not to get caught. The days you cheated, the name of the person with whom you had an affair, her address, I know it all. I even know the hotel you stayed at, and the places you visited." "You really thought you could hide it all?" I said. My husband was the type to take notes about everything, and his diary contained all the details of his affair, including his mistress's identity and address. From his computer history, I could see all the places he had visited with his mistress. I don't know if he underestimated me or he's just plain stupid. Perhaps it's a bit of both. If you wanted to divorce that badly, at least have the decency to do it before moving on to the next one, I said. With that, my husband started making outrageous excuses. "No, you've got it all wrong. It wasn't an affair. You've been so busy with work recently, you're rarely at home. You've been cooking less. Our meals are mostly takeout. And you only clean and do the laundry every other day. You've been slacking off." At his words, I lost it. "What? You're saying it wasn't an affair? How else would you explain it? And you're blaming me for the housework when you've dumped it all on me? You're usually home before me, so why don't you do some of the chores yourself? I've asked for help countless times, haven't I? But you've always made excuses saying you don't know how to do it." Taken aback by my outburst, my husband fell silent. "Oh, by the way, your belongings are shipped to your mistress's place," I added. At this, my husband's voice noticeably changed. "Wait, hold on a minute. Why would you do that?" He probably thought I had sent his stuff to his parents' house. I had considered doing that at first, but I didn't want to inconvenience my in-laws, especially not after they just cleaned up after heavy rain. So I decided to send his things to his mistress's place. "By the way, your stuff should arrive tomorrow. I hope her husband doesn't find out." Turns out, his mistress was a junior colleague in the same department as my husband. I initially thought she was single, but my husband's diary revealed. She was also married. What have you done? My husband shouted, but it wasn't my problem. You're the one at fault here for cheating. I have ample evidence of your infidelity, and I've already consulted a lawyer. I'll be seeking damages and a divorce. You have no right to complain since you've been cheating, right? But that's not it. I thought if you knew I was interested in another woman, you'd try harder to keep me by doing more housework. At his words, I could only sigh in disbelief. You sure are confident in yourself. Unfortunately, you're not nearly as attractive as you think you are. You've really overestimated yourself. Let me shatter that image for you. With that, I hung up, fully intending to make a fool of him later. I sent a certified letter to my husband's company and demanded compensation for the emotional distress caused by the affair from both my husband and his mistress. When my husband's belongings arrived at his mistress's place, it naturally caused a lot of trouble. She ended up getting divorced too, and they both had to pay damages. Neither my husband nor his mistress could continue working at the company and had to leave. I managed to get a divorce without any trouble and received my damages, so I don't really know or care about what happened afterward. However, I do still keep in touch with my former in-laws who still send me gifts during the holidays. I've heard that my ex-husband has returned to them, but they've made it clear that he's not allowed back into the house. Even they don't know where he is or what he's doing now. With my return to the single life, I only have to take care of myself when it comes to chores and cooking. I no longer have to accommodate my picky ex-husband, and on busy days, I can even just have a beer and snacks. In a way, I feel more fulfilled.